whatever that force is, the flow, the Tao, the God, the higher power, the power greater than ourselves. It is not random. It is not capricious. It is not distant. It is ever present, but we just cannot see it.
That's Ron Chapman. He is a professional storyteller who has spent decades helping folks navigate trauma, recovery, and their spiritual journeys through story.
The more times we work through those trace elements by telling the story, the less and less power it has over us. We're literally getting relief from our own held traumas.
From wrestling with God to knowing when not to perform, this conversation takes a grounded look at storytelling as a responsibility, not as a little cutesy-wootsy.
He said, Ron, if you are using people's precious time on a stage, in a book, you better damn well deliver.
This is Ron Chapman. Ron, let's imagine that you are sitting on an airplane and there is a complete stranger sitting next to you and they casually look over and say, what do you do for a living? How do you choose to respond to that?
Yeah. It really depends. I mean, my starting point usually is, well, it depends on who my audience is. And they'll typically go like, well, what do you mean by that? And I go, well, I've got this professional coaching and consultation thing that I do, strategy. I'm a storyteller. I write books. And at some point, what they'll do is they'll say, oh, tell me more about that. And so then I can kind of dive in. I have to honestly admit, Heather, that there's a part of me that really enjoys being not easily defined.
Yeah.
And some of that's just consistent with how I've experienced the world, which is kind of unbounded. And so I guess I just kind of allow things to flow where they will flow and draw upon those and whatever interests people. Something it just occurred to me, some of that comes from my longtime mentor, who I call Master Samwise, who said, Ron, always be mindful of what your audience wants and needs and position yourself accordingly.
There's a quote in your book. I started the first one in your 3-part series, and there's a character named Clint.
Yes.
Who says that resistance is, quote, divinely inspired. He's given a little speech, and it's pretty good. And I wrote that down because I wanted to ask you, I know you as a storyteller.
Yeah.
I want to hear all the gold that you've learned about storytelling in this conversation. But I think it's important for folks to understand the context of who you are first. And so I thought a fun question, it's kind of a deep AF question, but resistance is divinely inspired. What resistance have you faced in your life that you think is important for people to understand about you?
Oh, goodness. I mean, the easy answer is alcoholism. I'm coming up on 40 years sober, and were it not for some extraordinary people, I may not be alive today. So all pretty remarkable stuff. But real early in sobriety, it was really funny. I went to this young pastor who was clearly in over his head with me, because I was deeply wounded with my life, and I was looking desperately for help, and I could tell he didn't know what to do with me. But he went to the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel of the Lord beside the river, and the angel of the Lord gets fed up with Jacob and his questions, and he smites him and disjoints his hip, and then God runs in and blesses Jacob and names him Israel and founds a great nation upon him. And at the time, I just thought, well, that's silly. But it defines my life. I have wrestled with so much stuff, Heather. I sometimes refer to myself as a swamp guide with some of the individual work I do, just going into the swamp with people. So I'm very comfortable with gnarly topics, difficult space, work with a fair number of people with pretty serious challenges in their life. So I'm a deep water guy, and I've been blessed as a result of it. So it's really kind of, in retrospect, 40 years later, he was telling my story with that angel of the Lord thing. So sometimes people who know me, they'll go like, "What are you up to, Ron?" I said, "I'm wrestling with the angel of the Lord." And they'll go, "What now, Ron?" And I'll go, "Oh, this is a story, right?"
Are you spiritual?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
wrestling with God, what have you, and I'm going to use the word God
Yeah.
just as a blanket term, but
Yeah.
what have you learned about that entity?
Hmm. Well, I'm going to geek out on you now.
Let's go.
At one point in time, I'd heard so much stuff about what we might call higher power that just didn't make sense. So I said, okay, this just can't be. So I actually did a lengthy research project and ended up creating an audio set called The Way of Spirit that actually tries to understand, like, whatever that thing is, whatever it
Mm.
is, how does it operate in and through us? And um, so what came out of that is, I guess what I want to say about it, Heather, is I'm convinced that whatever that, I like the way people in recovery talk about this. They talk about God as I do not understand God, which really makes sense to me. I don't know if I can explain what's going on there. Whatever that force is, the flow, the Tao, the God, the higher power, the power greater than ourselves. It is not random. It is not capricious. It is not distant. It is ever present,
Mm.
intertwined with everything we are doing, but we just cannot see it. And so the many masters who have told us to, awaken to awareness, they're pointing us in that direction. That there's like this incredible entwining between us and the spirit of the universe, and
Mm.
it's just not easily seen, especially when bad things happen and so forth. But I have
Yeah.
a deep down conviction that somehow or another everything is somehow or another imbued with the spirit. In fact, the word enthusiasm, entheos, to be enthused is to be filled with the spirit, which I thought was like really a cool idea that because I kind of live with a lot of enthusiasm, as I know you do. So
Yes, sir.
I think we're embedded with it and it with us all the while.
So how do you wrestle with creativity with your spirituality? Because I've talked to a lot of creative folks, and there's some folks
Mm-hmm.
that are, kind of more. I'm going to use Jerry Seinfeld as an example. Like, it is a routine. It's a routine. You show up to your pen and your paper, and that's nothing more than working out. And then I've talked to other folks that are like the muse. You know what I'm saying? Where do
I
you
like,
kind of sit with that? Because you have a gift, and
yeah,
you've storytelling is part of your identity, I dare to say. So when you think
yes.
about like creativity, does it have any influence on your spirituality and vice versa?
Oh goodness, yeah. Such a great question. I love the way you said the muse.
It's serious. It's very
this is
serious.
like this is like really yeah. I mean, but that is my experience.
Mm,
Much of what I've experienced, much of what I've written, many of the stories I've told. I mean, I don't honestly know where they come from.
yeah.
There are moments where it just falls upon you, and you're like, where did that come from? And there
Mm,
are times where Master Sam Wise used to say this. I'd go, where do you come up with this wisdom? He goes, Ron, it's not my wisdom. I just pause and there it is. And I go, like, that is amazing.
mm,
And some of the stories that I've written have just come out of, they've just come out of nowhere. So I think there's a great deal of mystery. Ken Wilber, the great philosopher, some say the greatest living American philosopher, said that the mistake we humans make is we take that which is incomprehensible, mysterious, the mystery of the universe, and he called it, we flatland it.
mm,
We turn it into flatland where we go, oh, it's exactly like this and exactly like that, and it does this and it does that, and here's the rules it follows. And he goes like, how can you do that with this
yeah.
infinite, indescribable essence that seems to be permeating everything? So
Mm,
it seems like if we can tap into that, and I suspect this is your story as I have listened to you tell your stories and talk, that sometimes we just tap into something, Heather, and
yeah.
it's like remarkable what can come forward. And if we're honest, if we're really honest, a guy named Wayne Lickerman calls it the false sense of authorship, that what happens is we go like, I did that. And it's like, no, you
Mm,
didn't. We don't know where it came from. That's just your
mm,
ego trying to lay claim to it.
yeah. Word. I'm gonna derail us for a second because I just
Yeah.
have to ask you: did you say that your guru was named Sam Wise?
Yeah,
That is, you know what I'm about to say, right? Like that is the
yeah,
most badass name ever.
well, I have a friend who professes to believe that every time I say that, he kind of rolls his eyes in heaven. I don't know if that's true or not. He died a few years ago, but somewhere along the way, I mean, he worked with me for 27 years. I mean,
Hmm.
that is a long, long mentorship. And when I first hooked up with Master Samwise, I was about recovery. And then what I found out, and it was remarkable, I did not know this. He was a well of wisdom that I mean, this is like the classic story of students finding a teacher and they don't know the teacher's the teacher until, 20 years later, they go like, how could that be? He was a well of wisdom and pointed me in so many directions, which really have become instrumental in becoming who I am. And so, yeah, I mean, if he really does roll his eyes in heaven every time I say Master Samwise, it's like, I think that's kind of amusing personally, but,
When did storytelling become a thing for you?
when I was a kid, I grew up in a small city in Oklahoma. And my family circumstances were probably pretty normal, but for me, they were fairly difficult. And I say it that way because I don't want to blame anybody. They were
Yeah.
all doing the best they could, truly. And books and stories were my escape. I mean, that's where they were refuge for me. The basement of the library. That was my happy place
Yeah.
because nobody
Yeah.
could find me. The musty smell of books. I was, in the quiet, the stillness, and so stories were with me from just as early as I can remember.
Hmm.
And at some point in time, of course, they naturally began to flow out of me. I guess it was a foregone conclusion someday I would write books and tell stories, but then something happened along the way. I was I was working with a particular spiritual teacher, a guy named Rondell, and he said, if we intend to be effective in the world as teachers, as spiritualists, we need to find the most effective ways to communicate. And you're going to find that stories, parables, metaphors, anecdotes are
Yeah.
the best teaching tool. And you look at it, I mean, all the teachers across time have
Yeah.
used story because we can't get our head around this stuff. So they tell us stories.
Yeah.
And so it has become. I got some feedback at one point when I was trying to understand, what we might call my brand, and someone gave me some feedback. They said, "Ron, you teach," and I said, "What do you mean I teach?" I said, "Well, I mean, you use stories, you use parables, you use anecdotes, you use illustrations, you draw graphs, and it helps me get my head around stuff that I can't understand
Mm.
otherwise." And I go, well, that validates the idea that we desperately need stories and so forth to get our heads around things that we just can't get our heads around otherwise.
Yeah. What do you think has been the hardest thing for you to learn in storytelling overall? This is a high level question, but like the thorn on your
Mm.
side, the hardest part of it for you.
Oh, I have mixed feelings about that question. I would like to believe that what really sells a story is the content,
Hmm.
right? That the meaning of the story, which of course doesn't have to be overt at all.
Yeah.
But I'm aware that unless it is told well, it just won't have the import we want it to have.
Yeah.
And the place I have a real conflictedness, Heather, sometimes storytelling becomes very, very performative. And there are moments where you realize that the teller has simply collapsed into ego-driven performing. And at that point, I feel like we lose authenticity, we lose credibility. I mean, that's my take on it. On the other hand, I have seen some tellers who have really become masterful at the performative aspects, and they're able to do it at a level which is a little bit inconceivable to me. I was watching a movie one day. I was watching Meryl Streep one day. I can't remember what movie she was in, but I remember watching her amidst all these other characters, and I go, she's got it. There's something in her performativeness which is real, it's authentic, it's genuine. And the people around her are merely impersonating what she's doing. Yeah. So there's a level at which the performative becomes really authentic and genuine.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit over the years I've interviewed a lot of audience members about, what works for them. And in the end, I think where I fall on that is I think authenticity, being real, is what ultimately sells a story. And so the more we play in the performative space, the harder it is to be authentic until you get to some particular level. So I think it's, and of course, audiences love the performative stuff, right? And so I'm aware that it's a way of selling it. But what am I going to say about this? All right, going back to what Rondell said about if we're going to affect people and make contribution in the world, I think what I go to with that, Heather, is it's like I think I want to be known as someone who's just real. Mm-hmm. I was on a stage some years ago, big audience, and it was really. I had some friends who were there at one of the tables, and nobody knew me in this setting, and somebody they like at some point they go like, "Who is this guy? Where did he come from?" He's like, "Wow, who is this guy?" And one of my friends turned to them and said, "Oh, that's just my friend Ron." And I thought, that's it. I just want to be that guy Ron. I don't want to be that, professional storyteller because I think in the end that kind of authenticity is what changes people's lives.
And how do you check yourself on that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is a weird question, but let's just be honest about it.
Yep.
Sometimes I feel like I'm being authentic, and then the people closest to me would be like, "Yo, you're not being authentic." And I'm like, "I am being authentic." And they're like, "No, you're not."
Yeah.
And more often than not, they're right. And it's been something that I've been really wrestling with myself, because as I'm, learning storytelling and trying to get better and better and better, to your point earlier, you learn the rules and then you break them, but then you need to have that spirit and that groundedness in you to be able to take it somewhere. And that takes a level of self-awareness, groundedness, tapped in to you. Yeah. And sometimes I feel like I am, but man, sometimes I'm wrong and I'm not. So I'm curious how you kind of check yourself on that.
Well, I think I have several. I love this question, Heather. So if you guys kind of go into the spiritual mastery realm,
let's go.
They will tell us that our ego and our pride can easily become the basis for our fall. I've done a whole bunch of study on this about how people fall and fail, and I think it's exactly right. So I think this is a really and you know this story as well as any listeners. It's like, you hear that story about so-and-so who was such a this, and then it's like they're in prison now. It's like, well, what happened? It's like, well, they kind of got caught up in themselves, and the next thing you know, they sold themselves out. So there's some kind of a really important spiritual principle here. Part of this is an awareness practice. To know as a feeling in one's body when one is authentically present. I'm actually practicing it right now. I'm actually being very mindful about the feeling in my body of being present. And I've been really, really fortunate, although I don't like this, that I have somewhere along the way, I came up with kind of my own internal barometer. And the way that works is I wake up in the morning at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. And what I hear come out of my mouth is, "Oh, damn, did you really say that? Did you really do that?"
Yeah.
Where and I'm really grateful for it, because I don't want to be that person who misuses the gift, the stage, the audience. And it's just so very difficult and far too common for people to misuse it because they start, Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, which is like in the organization development world. Somebody asked him one day, okay, so these people get great. Why do they fail? Why do they fall? And he did the research and he said, humility is replaced by hubris, right? That the thing that gets us on the stage is a kind of personal humility. We have not yet gotten full of ourselves, and that at some point in time, when you get a standing ovation for the X number of time, it's like, look at me, I'm pretty special. This is all about me. And the next thing you know, you're making decisions that are potentially very problematic. I guess I have to disclose something here. Some part of the professional work I've done over the years has involved dealing with perpetrators, actually dealing with the victims of perpetrations. And so I hold this one really, really close because I've talked to many people who were victimized by those who lost their humility and started thinking that they could take advantage of others in all kinds of ways, financially, sexually, all kinds of ways. And so I have feelings about this because I was taught that is spiritual malpractice, to use a gift at the expense of someone else. And since I've talked at depth with some of those people who have spent years trying to heal from terrible traumas, it's like, I need to make sure that I keep myself honest and don't go there. And I'm just lucky enough to have a barometer if I say something really problematic today when you interview me, I will wake up at 2:30 tomorrow and the little voice will go, oh, Jesus, Ron, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I will wince because it's like, I don't like finding out that I'm guilty of my ego getting away with me too, just like everyone.
And it's such an interesting balance because I'm lucky enough to have friends who are just so leaps and bounds ahead of me with communication and sales specifically. My world's filled with a bunch of entrepreneurial people. And I really admire their skill set where they can use tools in their body and their word choices and so forth to, the harsh word would be manipulate. And, it could be for good or it could be used for bad, right? And it's interesting because as a communicator, I want to bring in those skills and learn how to do them. And then also it seems counterintuitive sometimes to the present and the authenticity. And it's just such an interesting, I know there's not really an answer for it. I was just curious your take on improving as a speaker, performer, and using those tools, and then also not letting that bypass heart, soul, spirit. But then also too, a lot of people listen to this show are like old soul helper, healer type folks.
Yeah.
And we can kind of throw up on people too.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We are certainly humans, aren't we?
Dang it.
Yeah. There just are those moments where you go, oh, dear God, what is wrong with you, Ron? So I think back now to a couple of things. I'm going to mirror if Sam were here, he would say he had a Texas accent. He'd say, well, Heather, damn, the simple fact that you can ask yourself that question means you're going to be okay. Yeah. It's when we stop looking ourselves in the mirror and ask the question. But over the years, I'm a geek, so I've really tried to figure out, like, what is it that causes someone to be exceptionally good? And the question I often use when I'm trying to understand how things are going is I will ask people, what did you get from my performance, my book, my whatever?
Oh, that's good.
And why does it matter to you? That's the second part of the question. I need them to say, well, like I'll go back and tell you when I told this part of this story already with the person who said, when I said, what did you get and why does it matter to you? And they said, there's a realness to you. You get real with us. And that makes you approachable, which means I can learn from you. And I go like, wow, that's a big deal. And so it's that willingness to ask the question, and it's not an easy one to answer. People, you know this. People are like, "Oh, Heather, you were great." Oh,
Yeah.
great. Why was I great? Well, you were just great.
Yep.
Yeah, but what did I do? It's like, oh, it's just the whole thing. It's
Yep.
just great.
Yep. Yep.
You go like, okay, but like, give me some help here. It's like, no, you're great. you go like, that is not helpful at all. All it does is massage my ego. But sometimes what you will get is that person, and there are some of these in the Moth, you know, some of them, who do have that kind of perceptive capacity to look at you and say, you know, when you were doing thus and such, it did this to and for me. And that's what I need to know because, well, Sam, God bless him, God, he called me up one day. He'd come to watch me do a workshop, and he just shook his head afterwards, said, "You and your ego had a field day up there." I go, "Oh, dear God, what did I do?" He said, "It was the whole damn thing." I go, "How? What?" And anyway, he gave me what I think is the gold standard. He said, "Ron, if you are using people's precious time on a stage, in a book, you better damn well deliver something that is valuable to them. Otherwise, you are misusing the space." And I've
That's
taken,
heavy.
I know
That's
I've taken
good.
it. I mean, really, okay, so go to the Moth, there's like, what, 200, 250 people out there. They're going to listen to you for your 5 minutes. So if there's 200 people, you've just used up 1,000 minutes of people's time. You better. I mean, just sorry, people are going to think I'm like, I don't know, they're going to think something about this, but it's like, you better do something of value because you've just taken 1,000 minutes of precious lifetime.
How do you determine what's valuable?
I need the audience to tell me. I need the audience to tell me what's working and what isn't working. And when I'm setting out in the audience listening, I'm always trying to like process. It's like, what are they doing? Where's the value in this? And I mean, sometimes the value is just really being entertained. You and I know some of the speakers. I mean, they're just incredibly entertaining. It's just really fun to just listen to them.
Yeah.
And there are others who like come with a serious message. And then I'm just going to be honest. There are those times where you go like, there's just the gratuitous use of this stage.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to cut newcomers a lot of slack. I mean, I'm not talking just about the person who gets on a stage for the first time. We're going to give them a lot of grace. But over time, if you're going to take, I mean, if someone's going to read, my last book is 8 hours and 30 minutes of listening time if you do it on Audible. And that's a big chunk of someone's time. I better use that time well.
Yeah. You tell a lot of very heavy stories.
Yeah, I do.
And I'm curious your take on kind of gauging when is the right time to tell a story, how to tell it, sensitively. There's that word.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of folks reach out and, share that they want to share this part of their life or whatever. There's so much fear that's wrapped around that. And then two, just hesitancy on how to approach heavy topics with honesty and rawness and also with sensitivity. So I just threw up on you. Hit me what you got.
It's totally okay. This is great. You're good at this. I mean, truly. You ask, you have some substance and depth to what you're up to, which I think is an incredibly valuable thing. So, by the way, that's giving you exactly what it is I seek out. It's like you've got substance and depth, Heather, and it shows, and it makes a difference, real difference. So, generally speaking, I want to encourage people to put it out there. For a couple of reasons. One is what we know. Okay, I'm going to go geeky on you here. Here's what we know. If you've got heavy duty material, it is stored as chemicals in your brain. The more times you can watch the movies Inside Out, and they'll tell you all about how the brain works. They're really great. And the more times, let's say that it's something traumatic, or it's a good example. The more times we work through those trace elements by telling the story, the less and less power it has over us. We're literally getting relief from our own held traumas, damages, whatever those things are for us. But the more important one for me, I told a story recently. It was actually in a competition in Toastmasters, which is another place I practice my craft.
Love Toastmasters.
Yeah, it's such a great stage to work with. And I intentionally told a story that I knew it was a competition. I knew it probably didn't stand a chance because it was pretty heavy. But it was one of those life-changing experiences for me. I told the story of remembering cutting myself with razor blades when I was a young man and drinking. And I know that's a very off-putting topic for all kinds of reasons. But the reason I tell that story sometimes is because of what happened the first time I'm going to cry. The first time I told that story, I was terrified to tell it, just terrified, but I knew I needed to tell it. And I told the story, and sure enough, a lot of people are like, we're not talking to that guy. He's a sick, twisted guy.
Yeah.
I don't know but they were not going to look me in the eye. And but what happened was 5 people came up. See, here's the tears. 5 people came up afterwards and they said, thank you. That was the first time anybody has told my story about the same ways that I self-harm. And now I know I'm not alone. And I go like, chills. Okay, there it is, right? I mean, I got chills too with your chills. It's like, that's the deal. And especially where we're dealing with mental health issues, which we just don't talk about enough, substance abuse, domestic violence, sexual, I mean, all that stuff, it's all in the closet. Everybody shows up and puts on their best Easter bonnet and acts their best. And everybody goes like, they've all got it together. I can't talk about my twisted story. So I'm out on the extreme with this one only because I've seen so often the incredible value of opening that space up for people. And one of the other things that has happened with this, which has been so very interesting, this has happened more than a few times, where someone will come up to me, I mean, more than a decade later, they'll be somewhere that I am, and they'll come up and they'll go, I need to tell you that 10 years ago, I wanted to kill you. I said, what do you mean? You go, well, you talked about blah, blah, blah. And I really hated you and what you said.
Wow.
But today I know that I hated it because you were telling my story and I didn't know you were telling my story.
Damn.
And thank you. So you just don't ever know if you're called to put something out there, Heather. You just don't know the effects it may have over time. And we hear these stories with some frequency where some kid comes back 25 years later, you're a teacher and you think you've, labored in vain. And some kid comes up and goes, you changed my life in 4th grade. And you're like, what did I do? It's like, well, it's just what you did and who you were. And I always go to Maya Angelou's line, which I just love. We may not remember what they did or what they said, but we will remember how they made us feel.
Yeah.
And that's just incredibly empowering. So at the same time, I have periodically tried to do humor. I suck. Actually, I don't suck, but it's not my deal. I feel like I'm there to try and shift people's perception, I guess is a way to say it. And so I will, you've probably noticed, I tell a fair number of spiritual and or mystical stories. Because it causes people to go like, well, they either go like, wow, that's really interesting. Or they go, there is something wrong with that guy.
Yeah. I kind of want that though. There's something. Yeah. I have a very tactical question that's also very emotional. Okay. So it's going to be interesting.
Let's do it.
When we are sharing a very vulnerable, painful story, there's a lot of emotion attached to it. Like, let's say we are the quote victim in the story, like something happened to us. Sometimes it can swing one way. And I've done this myself where it sounds, I'm trying to think how to say this kindly. Let me just say it bluntly. It sounds like a pity party, like, all this stuff happened to me. And then we think about character development you want to have sides to a character for it to be whole. So not everything's good.
Mm.
Sometimes they're the villain, I mean, you've done a great job with that in your novels.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like thinking about us as a character and not making it one dimensional, where even if
Mm.
X did happen to us and it was bad, we add
Mm.
dimension into it where there's still a human piece. And I don't know if I'm articulating this
Mm-hmm.
correctly, but I'm curious your thoughts on how to not come across as kind of poor me, but also be honest about the emotion that sometimes we just been
Mm-hmm.
through some shit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is like one of those cases where transparency is really valuable. I mean, to even say, listen, I feel like a victim. I know I'm
Mm,
probably not a victim, but I feel like one.
yeah.
They really did do me wrong. I really did get wounded. Um, and I think what happens when we're honest about that, now, of course, it requires a little bit of self awareness to know that you've collapsed into a place of victimhood or pity or whatever. Um, but I think there's real value in. Somebody once said, Ron, you got to trust the intelligence of the audience, and that if you play real with them, if you are transparent, if you explain, like, and I've seen things like this where, I'm thinking of a storyteller at the Moth who I've seen this several variations where someone will go like, well, boy, I sure got carried away with that, didn't I? Right? It's just they're telling
Mm,
the truth about it. And the audience goes like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, that's cool. Glad you got real with us. I think there's a lot to be said for transparency.
mm,
And let's be honest that if you look at the process of healing, some part of healing, which is perhaps what's needed when we are in a place of feeling victimized, wounded, self-pitying, is to own that stuff, to not deny it. Our culture's not very good at supporting people in dealing with their self-pity, their victimhood. We
mhm,
really,
mhm,
probably because we try and deny it in ourselves, I would guess.
mm,
And so there's just to even know that I'm doing that, or like Sam would have said, to ask that question of myself: Am I just playing a pity game here? Um, it actually makes me think that would make a wonderful story to tell. Let me tell you a story about me and my self pity.
yes.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
that'd be a really good story. And the reason that immediately occurs to me is really valuable, Heather, is how many people in the audience they'd silently nod their heads and go like, "Oh yeah, me too," but I'm not going to
Mhm,
admit it, not on a stage,
mhm,
because everybody goes through that. Um, and I think about the times that the admission of my woundedness has been the ticket forward into healing.
amen. How do you
Yeah.
start stories?
How do I start stories?
Hmm.
I am of the opinion that you should just cut right into the heart of it, right out
Okay.
of the get go. And there's a reason for that. I was taught, and I believe this is true, that the whole point, and I know that at the Moth, the introductions are necessarily very brief. It's
Yeah.
like they Ron Chapman, come on down, like that's the introduction, that's it. Or Al, the sometimes regular host might say, yeah, my good friend Ron, come on down. It's like a very brief, but the whole purpose of an introduction, and okay, if we think about that, the purpose of the introduction, which is why the applause at Moth works so well,
Mm,
is to get people engaged. The
mhm,
whole point of the introduction. So I know you've had this happen. You go to some conference, someone has a 5-minute bio introduction.
yeah.
You've seen
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you go like, I'm done. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
like, you just used up 5 minutes of my precious time telling me how important you are.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can listen to you. Um, and so the whole purpose of the intro is to get to pique people's interest, because this is ultimately about them, what's in it for them. And then the purpose of those opening lines is to hook them. Because if you can get them leaning in and then hook them, they will stay for the story.
Yeah.
Which is why, and I know you've had this experience, and I'm guilty of it at times, is we do these little, preparatory remarks that just kind of,
Hmm.
it's like, cut to the chase.
Hmm.
Give them the stuff that they're going to be interested in. And it just requires us to forego a lot of a lot of the tendencies we have to do some kind of a setup, which may actually not serve the story.
Where do you see people, storytellers, communicators, losing people? What are some kind of surefire ways to lose an audience?
Oh, well, if they, the first most obvious one is if they don't hook you,
Mm-hmm.
it's that first impression thing. If your first impression of the story is like, oh dear God,
Yeah.
like they may, even if it's a good story, they may never get you back because they've lost you from the beginning. I think probably one of the, except for, I mean, there are some storytellers who do this really well, but I think for most of us, the propensity to get into too much detail, right?
Yeah.
We go into all these particulars that the audience really doesn't care about. And we see this, like, for example, on stages where people just can't quite get the story done. It's like there's another detail, another detail, another detail. And then I suspect I've had an interesting conversation with people about this over time. There's this question of do you give a moral to the story, or do you let the story stand on its own? And I don't think there's a simple answer to that. As you know from having listened to me a few times, sometimes I just can't help putting a moral on the story, and other times it's like it's the story and it's done.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that this may be as much about how we think of ourselves and the effect we're trying to produce with an audience.
The effect we're trying to produce with the audience.
Yeah. Do I want them to? Would I like them to learn something? Would I like them to just have an uproariously good time with me? Would I like them to? Would I like them to take action? Is there something that I would like them to, either overtly or covertly to take action? Sam told me one day, he said, Ron, you may use 90% of your time on the stage just to set up the 10% that you want them to take home.
That's good.
It is. But in order to do that, Heather, I have to be clear on why the heck I'm on that stage.
Yeah.
And I have to ask the question, what's in it for them? I am using their precious time. If I'm just up here to ingratiate myself by telling a story, I have to have a serious look at myself in the mirror and go, is that really my purpose? Just to ingratiate myself on a stage using these people's precious time? That seems like a misuse of people's time. You probably have figured out I have a deep sense of purpose that we're we're here to do something, and whatever that may be, and trying to get clear on, how we're affecting the world around us is a really important piece of that.
That's what's. I'm glad you brought up. Does this story have a moral or not? I grew up in ministry where everything was.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to preach to you.
Yeah.
But it's interesting befriending entertainers and people kind of in the creative space. They just don't give a rat's ass like what you take from like this is what it is. You know what I mean? And so finding our role as communicators and kind of wrestling with calling. I don't know if you use that word or not. It was
I do.
A hot word in Arkansas in the Bible Belt. But kind of wrestling, like, what is our role here as a communicator? Is it to be seen? Is it to try to share something with you? What is that? And then back to the manipulation piece. How much of it do we trust that God is doing something in them versus us trying to make them, beat them over the head with it? So again, I threw up on you, but what'd you do?
No, not at all. Well, probably the most important thing I heard in that is I have no business thinking I know what anybody needs. And yet I really need to be mindful that somebody goes to the Moth or Toastmasters or TED. I mean, they're going there for something. And at a minimum, for me to be mindful of maybe what that something is. What I was taught to do when I have a client, when I'm going in to do, a keynote, or and here comes Sam again. What Sam taught me to do, he says, Ron, what you need to do is get to the person who knows the audience, knows the setting, and you need to ask them what it is this audience, this setting needs most.
Mm.
And you need to take that into consideration, either in how you use your content, or what content you decide to bring. I had a funny experience with a client group some years ago. It was a really funny experience. They said, well, you've been highly recommended, Ron, and what is it you would like to do for us? And I said, well, there's a lot of stuff I can do. I'd kind of like to know what you need. And they go, well, but what do you deliver? And I said, I deliver all kinds of things. What I'd like to know is, what do you all most need? And I will then suggest some things that meet that. And the dude looked at me and goes, so you can't tell us what you're going to do? I said, no, because it's not a service to you to do something I want to do without knowing what you need and want.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the conversation. It's like, because I wouldn't tell him, I'm going to do a thing that does this. It was such an interesting conversation, but it told me so much about the world, right? That the world expects us to walk in and say, hey, I tell humorous stories. Okay. I tell parables. Okay. Hey, I do workshops on conflict. I mean, it's fine. But in the end, if I'm not meeting the needs of whoever's on the receiving end, I really need to ask myself what I'm doing there.
Yeah. As a novelist.
Yes. Books. Yay.
What have you learned through that has made you a better performative storyteller, first person?
Oh, wow. I have learned how important surprise is. I have learned how important it is to create believable setting and believable character. And I think the reason for those is because it's that authenticity thing. People need us to get real.
Yeah.
And so if I can characterize a setting well enough, and if I can characterize the characters well enough, then it comes across. Feedback I get on the books I write very often is people go, man, these characters seem so real. And I just laugh and I go, well, be careful talking to me, because you're going to be a character, because they're all real people. I'm not making these people up. I mean, they're real people. And they go like, these are real people. And it's like, yeah, they're real people. I mean, I fictionalize them. I composite them sometimes, but they're one of the authors I interviewed years ago said, Ron, let's be honest, everything is biography. The only thing we ever tell or write is from our own unique lived experience. And so therefore everything is biography. And I thought, isn't that true? I mean, I could never tell a story through the eyes of Heather.
Yeah.
I can't do it because I can't see through the eyes of Heather. I can imagine what you're doing.
Yeah.
But in the end, I've got to figure out, like, so what's this thing I'm channeling? For whatever reason, it seems that I wrote there's a line in one of my books where Pitcairn, the lead character in the series, is talking to a minister who's clearly in over his head with this guy. And the minister, it takes this long pause and he goes, I don't know. I think maybe we just have to tell our stories because we just have to tell our stories. And I think that's probably true at times. We just have got to tell these stories. It is like a calling, isn't it?
It is. I know we're at top of the hour. I'm going to hit you with a biggie before we go.
Okay.
This subject matter that you're tackling in this series, I think I'm on chapter 13 of the book, the first one.
Yeah.
And for those listening, and I'll link them up in the show notes. I mean, you're sharing a side of a story of the villain, really, and the perpetrator, and asking hard questions about what humanity's role is and some of the ways that we behave. And that's just book one, where, as far as I've gotten, I don't even know where we're going from here, Lord Jesus.
Well,
but I'm curious, like, why was this an important topic for you to tackle?
Mm. That story, which includes, so I'm gonna I'm gonna blow a little bit of the storyline out here. I had an experience with a serial killer, a correspondent some years ago, and what he had to tell me was really life changing for me in terms of how I see the world. And it was so life changing. It's like someone needs to tell this story. I mean, this story needs to be told. So before he was put to death, he gave me permission to use his material, use his story, use his writings. And what's driving that plot is that you're already well immersed in. What's driving that plot is there are some really hard questions we are not asking. We presume people to be guilty. And oftentimes that's a wrong assumption. Stephen Covey said, well, somebody riffed off, seek first to understand was Stephen Covey's. And then someone riffed off of that and said, when we understand all, we will forgive all. And then someone riffed off of that and said, oh, when we understand all, we will realize there is nothing to forgive. And that's true to my experience. When you finally get a look at what's going on with people, and I've hung out with a lot of really interesting people, it's kind of an understatement. At some moment in time, if you're paying really close attention, you get this glimpse of something. You go, it's like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. I know you've had this experience, Heather, where you're in some disagreement with some loved one.
Yeah.
You've known for 20 years, and they suddenly cough something up, and you go like, I didn't know that.
For sure. Yeah.
I didn't know that. How could I not know that about you? It's like, because there's a backstory that we don't understand, don't know, don't seek, and don't want to understand. It's just a lot easier. Brene Brown did this great bit of research, and I love her conclusion. Her conclusion was, cutting to the chase here, when we blame, our curiosity dies. As soon as I find fault, I'm done. I don't have to wonder why you did what you did. I don't have to understand how it affected me. I'm done. You did that. You're a bastard. That's it. End of story. Right? Not understanding that actually you just put your mom in hospice and she's going to die on Tuesday. No wonder you behaved badly.
Yeah.
Oh, dear God, forgive me for judging you for that. I did not understand. Maybe if we were to go scriptural for a moment, maybe that is one of the most powerful lines in the Gospels. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Father, forgive me, for I often do not know what I do.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a hard truth, isn't it?
I could talk to you all day.
Well,
I could.
Maybe we should just
Yeah, this was so good. I have a staple final question. I'm like the pastor, like one more thing that I ask all the guests. But thank you. You didn't have to say yes to. I guess you kind of had to. I cornered you one day, but come on the podcast. But thank you for showing up and being willing to say some hard stuff and tell stories that a lot of people wouldn't share. I think it's such a gift to this world and so important for us to see ourselves through other people, but it takes somebody else, being brave enough to say, I'll go first. And that's what you do through your work. I will link up in the show notes where people can connect with you and buy your books. But Wonderful. Is there one particular thing that you want our listeners to do that you're the most excited about?
I am convinced, now I could be delusional, let's just be honest. I am convinced that we are at a particular juncture in the course of certainly American development, maybe Western civilization. I could quibble over this a bit. I'd like people to dive into the Saga of Grace series. There's a book 4 that's coming where I'm going to reimagine our future. In a very positive way. I think we're at a tipping point, and I would like people to wrestle with that. It's so easy to see a lot of difficult stuff, and yet the line that I use in some of this is there can be no breakthrough without a breakdown.
Yeah.
All breakthrough is preceded by breakdown. There's just not any exceptions to that. And so I think we're at a jumping off place like that. And then just to have a little fun, when I wrote the first book, A Killer's Grace, it was so dark and difficult and challenging, as you are discovering. But in the end, optimistic, that I simultaneously, I had one of those things drop in my lap, a book called My Name is Wonder, which I referred to A Killer's Grace as the dark side of grace, and My Name of Wonder as the light side of grace. And so if this is all too heavy for the readers, go get My Name is Wonder. It's the story of a goat on a spiritual quest with his spirit guide, Matt Crack Crow, who's a shape-shifting, snarky, incredibly wise spirit guide. And so if you just can't handle the dark stuff because the world is too difficult, go read about a goat named Wonder who's on a spiritual quest and going to change the world.
That'll be linked up in the show notes. Even though it is dark, I am thoroughly enjoying this novel. And I don't read fiction, fiction, but there's so much spiritual undertone and just really challenges my thought process. So I've really enjoyed it. Looking forward to reading the rest of it.
Well, let me say this. I want to say this again because this is high praise for you, and I knew this about you, but you've confirmed it here. Heather, you have substance and depth, and that is a precious thing.
Thank you.
That's what you need to know about what I experience about you. And why does that matter? Answering my own question. I've just told you how I experience you. Why does that matter? Because I need to know that there are people who are willing to go into the deep water, because we need to go into the deep water. And so kudos to you for being willing to do that and for showing it.
You won't find me anywhere else, man. Woo. I like being in there. Very last question. What is something in your life that you are deeply questioning right now? And I want to say that this could be related to what we talked about. It could be heavy. It could be something kind of silly. Like I always use the example of Taco Bell has breakfast burritos, like why in the world? So what's something on your mind lately that you have a big question mark around?
Well, okay. So I'm at a particular, my professional package got, the professional end of my life got doged earlier this year. I mean, all the contracts got eliminated. And so, through multiple means. So what I've been thrown into is a really, it's a really important passage. And what I'm really, really curious about is what I'm being led to. It's like so many doors have closed for me in the past 9 months, and there are some doors that are opening. But I'm waiting with bated breath to see what emerges next. At one point, I did a piece called the Three Halves of Life, and the third half of life, which I call the soul's journey home, is after we've had our lives, built our career, done our thing, contributed. We come to this new jumping off place, which soul's journey home is. Okay, I incarnated with a purpose. It's time to find that purpose and fulfill it. And I'm sort of sitting on the cusp of that. I feel it. I feel it emerging. I have some puzzle pieces, but I do not understand the puzzle. And so the thing I'm really sitting with right now is the emergence of this third incarnation of this life that I have. And I'm, maybe you and I can talk a year from now, and maybe I'll be able to tell you what the heck it is. But if you ever want to talk to me again, you're really good at this. So I want to volunteer for whatever you want to do with me in the future.
Let's do it. Ron Chapman, thank you for your time today. This is awesome.
Thank you, Heather.